I'm really excited to talk about all things LinkedIn with my guest, Miss Michaela Alexis. Michaela is someone that I have known for many years now. We've been connected across all the socials. She's an absolute rock star. But instead of me telling you about her, Michaela, welcome to today's GetResponse webinar. It's great to be here alongside you virtually. Why don't you let those watching at home or in their office know a little bit about yourself, your background, and more importantly, how has LinkedIn transformed your career?
Oh, I feel like my whole story is kind of tied up in how LinkedIn has transformed my career. I started as a creator kind of accidentally in 2016. I was a job seeker. I was 29 years old, about to turn 30 years old, kind of having that 30-year-old crisis of what do I do next? I was just laid up from the startup that I was working at. And I kind of got in this mode where I'm like, I'm so sick of this. I'm so tired of like hopping from job to job every few years and like kind of having to start from scratch every single time. And this was prior to personal branding even being a thing. I had been working with all these big brands, corporations, and I started to think, okay, what if I took some of the strategies and the content that I create for companies and I applied it to myself? What would that look like? And so I just started sharing my career journey and my journey as a job seeker on LinkedIn. And that was something that nobody else was really doing at the time. And it ended up resonating, which was crazy to me. People were sending me job forms that I could fill out. People were creating positions for me. People just got really invested in my story. And so after I landed my, in quotations, dream job, which to this day, it's still my dream job, even though I'm not working it, I'm still very close to my old boss. Um, I wrote an article on LinkedIn about how I use the platform instead of kind of going through the traditional way of looking for jobs. And that blew up. That crashed the app. I tried to open up the app on my phone and just kept crashing. And then I went onto my computer and I used the desktop version. And I don't know if you remember this, Carlos, but back in the day, you used to have like these analytics where it would show you like everything, like how many people were visiting you,
Mhm.
all of that stuff. It was super in depth. Well, every time I tried to go to that, the whole thing would crash. And then I look on like the top right corner of my screen and I see like there's like thousands of people that are trying to connect with me, thousands of people that are sending me messages. So this thing just like went like massively viral. And I was a marketer from Ottawa. I had a couple hundred followers on LinkedIn. And so this was just absolutely bananas. From that point, being kind of having a writing background, I was like, wow, this is such a cool space where I can, yes, of course, share like thought leadership and all of that stuff, but I could also share my career journey. I mean,
Mhm.
most of us are spending at least half of our time working. So why are we not telling the stories behind our careers? And so I've been essentially doing that since 2016. And it got to a point where people were like, Michaela, I don't know what you're doing, but I need you to teach me what you're doing. And so I made the choice, I call myself a reluctant entrepreneur because I'm not a risk taker. But I took the jump to teach other people how to do it. And since then, I've become a LinkedIn learning instructor. So I work directly with LinkedIn and with great brands like GetResponse. And it still doesn't feel like a job, but I've been doing it for a long time. So I don't want to pinch myself yet because this is truly a dream job.
Before we get into the first question, which is why LinkedIn is a powerful business social network, I want to echo with, some of the things that you said there, because like yourself, my career is also a byproduct of LinkedIn and the power of professional social networking. And it's important to preface by saying professional social networking because social networking happens in so many different forms, right? And I think it's
Yeah.
okay to differentiate LinkedIn from a TikTok or a Facebook or an Instagram, right? Like TikTok, Snap, Facebook, these are all more personal social networks. And to an extent, like LinkedIn, as it's matured, you have folks, especially now in this new era that we're in post COVID. I think COVID had a lot to do with it. People are, revealing behind the curtain who they are as a professional. But at the end of the day, LinkedIn is your resume. It's where you go to network professionally. It's where you go to uncover opportunities if you're in sales, if you're looking for work, right? That's just where you go to share thought leadership. So for me, I'll just share real quick with those that are watching here. in terms of, again, when we talk about the sheer power of LinkedIn, so I joined LinkedIn November 5th, 2008.
Oh,
And
wow. You're an
yeah,
OG.
it was the day that I lost my job in the banking industry. I just lost my job as a result to the banking crisis that we were going through here in the States at the time. And I call my mom and I'm like, "Hey mom, I just lost my job. I got laid off." And she, like most moms, is like, "Hey, sorry to hear about that." But she encouraged me to join LinkedIn. And I was like, "What's
Hey,
LinkedIn?"
mom.
And I was in my early 20s at the time. And back then, if you remember MySpace was, like the jam, and Facebook was still new. So she's like, "You're a smart guy. You'll figure it out." And that's exactly what I did. I joined LinkedIn and right away built a profile. I joined a few groups and I realized, okay, like there's a lot of other people that are going through what I'm going through. So I really like felt that sense of community early on. And it was through networking on LinkedIn where I became inspired, like yourself, to also become an entrepreneur at a very young age, because I realized, so if I'm not going to be able to get a job and bounce back very quickly, at least I can use this as a resource to connect with people.
Mhm.
And I have been on LinkedIn every single day for the last 16 years, like inside and out. I used to work at LinkedIn. It was using LinkedIn and really evangelizing it as a user that led to me getting hired in an actual job. And like yourself, I've done courses for LinkedIn Learning. So if there's two champions out there for the platform, it's you and I, and that's why I'm really excited that we're not only doing this webinar together about a platform that we're both very passionate about, but also we have you as a featured subject matter expert as part of our new content monetization platform. You
Mhm.
have a course that's going to be coming out that's going to
Yes.
teach all things LinkedIn.
Mhm.
So let's get right into, why should someone be on LinkedIn? Like a very high level, for someone that's kind of on the fence, because I hear about this a lot. I hear other professionals say like LinkedIn is just full of salespeople and it's very
Yeah.
spammy. There's no real value. And then I'll look at that person and say, like, what the heck are you talking about? You have,
Yeah.
about a billion users on the platform. They're professionals. If you think of a conference, the way I like to compare LinkedIn is it's a business conference happening in real time, 24/7,
Mhm.
365. So from your perspective, what is the value of someone being on LinkedIn?
It's pretty much exactly that. If you can kind of take out of your mind, I think a lot of people that have issues with LinkedIn or talk about LinkedIn this way, it's because they haven't logged onto the platform in a very long time and they might be used to it being primarily for job seeking. It has dramatically changed over the last few years, especially. And it's really and truly like the world's largest networking event. Everybody they could possibly ever want to connect with is standing right beside you, standing across the room. They're all right there and they're all right available. The other thing, and you kind of touched on this, and I think I kind of touched on it in the beginning too, is that there is a sense of security that you can gain in your career by building relationships on LinkedIn. I like to refer to LinkedIn as my career insurance. You look at people that are, amazing public figures, have really strong personal brands, somebody like Gary Vee. Why is Gary Vee so confident? I mean, there's multiple reasons why he's very confident. He will credit his mom for that, or his parents for that. But the other part of that is that he has such a strong personal brand that no matter what he decides to do tomorrow, if he wants to go and create a new t-shirt line, if he wants to go and join Cirque du Soleil, he's going to have people that support him through that process because he's built a personal brand that people know, like, and trust. And so, if you can kind of get past this idea that you should only use LinkedIn when you need something or when you're looking for a job and just start using it to build relationships, that's where the magic happens. When people talk about just getting sales messages on LinkedIn, well, that's like every other platform. If you go onto TikTok for the very first time, you're going to see everything. You're going to see recipes, you might see political discourse, you're going to see everything. You need to train the algorithm to show you what you find interesting and relevant. And the same thing is true for LinkedIn. If you don't have an optimized profile and you're not creating content that speaks to your core values and the values of your audience, you're just not going to get as much out of the platform as you want. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. And I hear the same thing all the time from professionals. They're on LinkedIn, but they don't realize the power that they can unlock within it. So I would say, first of all, when you take a step back and analyze what it is that you do professionally. So let's assume that you work in sales. Well, sales is very broad, right? There's various
Mhm.
forms of sales. So I've spent most of my career working in technology, right? I work for different technology companies in marketing. So in tech, you have sales professionals. So you can go on LinkedIn and you can join groups. I often encourage people,
Yes.
the first thing that they should do after they optimize their profile. And by the way, I want us to talk about how to optimize your profile to be found in search. But one of the first things I encourage new users or users who aren't really getting the most value out of LinkedIn is join up to 50 groups. You
Mhm.
literally type in what you do. So
Mhm.
do an assessment of what it is that you do. I work in sales, or I work in tech, or I work in marketing, I work in HR, and then type in those different professional titles or those different fields that you work in, the industry that you work in, the city that
I was
you
going to say the
live in and do
city, very
business
important.
in, right?
Yeah.
Like you can start drilling this down. And if you really start analyzing it, like your local chamber of commerce, I live in Jacksonville, Florida, right? There's a Jacksonville Chamber of Commerce LinkedIn group. Like there are different marketing association groups. So by joining the groups, like the growth hack that a lot of people don't realize is that by joining those groups, it gives you access to
Right.
engage with the people in that group, right?
Mhm.
So many times people say, well, I'm not getting the value of LinkedIn because I don't have a premium account, which, by the
You don't need
way,
it.
you don't need it. I
No.
do recommend spending a few dollars to
Yeah.
unlock the benefits, but if you're a little bit cash strapped, or for whatever reason you don't want to make the investment, I think it's like $30 here in the US. There are some ways that you can circumnavigate,
Mhm.
and one of those ways to give you access to people is groups. So that's like step one. Step two, though, is you have to listen and pay attention to what's being said in these groups, right? So going
Mhm.
back to the analogy of the business conference, the business networking event, if you're having a conversation with someone, the last thing you want is someone to butt into that conversation and say, hey, here's my business card. Here's what I do for a living. Groups
Mhm.
operate the same way. And then three is you have to contribute to the conversation, right? So not to steal your thunder, Michaela, but I see people making these mistakes so many times,
Yep.
and then they say there's like no value
Yep.
in LinkedIn. So, like, what would you say are some other mistakes that professionals are making when using LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'm like, my eyes are so focused on this question in the chat about building relationships and how do you do that without sounding like a salesperson. And that kind of like leads right into what you're already talking about. I think there's this idea that you need to be selling on LinkedIn to find value in it. And I actually just wrote an entire book on networking. And there is a big difference between instrumental networking, which is networking with the purpose of a sale. It's like when you go to a networking event specifically to get people to buy your products or services, versus what's called spontaneous networking, which is kind of being open to the idea of building relationships without kind of like the pressure of, I need to make it a sale. I'm looking at the dollar signs here. Right. And so when it comes to LinkedIn and building relationships without sounding like a salesperson, it goes just what Carlos just said, joining groups and participating in conversations, following people on LinkedIn and commenting on their content, having conversations within the comment field, using collaborative articles to spark conversations with people, um, actually listening and paying attention. Look at somebody's profile and examine them before you reach out and ask them for something. There's a really great app that's called Crystal Knows. I don't know if I mentioned in the course or not, but Crystal Knows is an AI app that is an extension on Chrome. And you can go to anybody's LinkedIn profile and ask it to do an assessment on their personality. And this is something that is missing in a lot of sales activities where it's like, you need to know where the person went to school or talk about their hobbies. But like, we're so much more than what's on our LinkedIn profile. And so, what I like about this app is that it goes deeper than the LinkedIn profile. It will tell you how they communicate, what they value, their communication styles, so how to reach out to them through email, how to talk to them during a meeting. And so by getting those insights before you reach out to somebody, that's going to make a massive difference. But I think a lot of it is not going onto LinkedIn with the purpose just of, okay, what can I ask for? What can I get from people? But what do I have to offer? What can I give? And there's always something, even if it's as simple as someone has a post and you're really great at proofreading, ask them, maybe they can proofread it. You can proofread it for them. When I started on LinkedIn and I had a few hundred followers, that's what I was doing as a job seeker. I was asking people, I was like, hey, I'm looking for work and I want to keep my brain nice and fresh. Could I look at a blog post that you've written? Could I help you with your LinkedIn profile? And this was like unpaid. I was just trying to help people because I knew that when I went to that next interview, I needed to be on top of my game. And we all know what happens, right? We go away for the holidays and we come back and we're like zombies, right? And so there was a benefit for me, but it ended up being something that like unlocked so much more than I could have imagined.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I just want to go back here to Tim's question, and I was trying to put it here
That's a
on the
great question,
screen.
though.
Yeah, fantastic question. So Tim says you're talking about building relationships. How do you approach this without acting like a salesperson? So you and I, Michaela, could spend the next 4 hours talking about social selling, right? My
Yeah.
recommendation, first of all, Tim, is as soon as Michaela's course drops on GetResponse, make sure you sign up for it because she's going to help
Mhm.
you unlock a lot of these different steps in the interim.
Yes.
There's a term that you need to familiarize yourself with, which is social selling. And it's essentially the art of selling online through social media. And to Michaela's point, no one wants to be sold to, right? Especially when you're talking about a medium where people are going in, they're checking their messages, they're very quickly filtering out what's perceived as advertising or as a salesy message. So my recommendation to sales professionals is very simple. Identify who it is that you're looking to do business with and start paying attention to what it is that they're posting and intentionally start engaging with their content, right?
Mhm.
So sales, especially a buyer's journey, unless you're talking about consumer product where someone's swiping a credit card, right? A buyer's journey in B2B is typically a longer process. And assuming, Tim, that we're talking about a B2B sale here. So you need to identify decision makers potentially at companies that you're looking to do business with. Then my recommendation is actually go in and invite them to connect and don't right hook them off rip with an offer or with, hey, this is what I do, have them a meeting. Like that is a cardinal sin on not just LinkedIn, but all forms of social media, right? You need to be cool about it, right? No different than you meet someone in person, you're cool, you're chill. Hey, what's up? Love to get to know you. You know, you leave it at that. The way you get to know someone on social media, especially a platform like LinkedIn, is by paying attention to what it is that they're posting. And from my perspective, I'd love to hear your thoughts, Michaela. I think outside of joining groups and listening, one of the growth hacks is swooping into conversations and just being present. Like if you really want to build
100%.
authority, if you want to build rapport with someone, bring value to conversations that are already happening. And this is something that I've done throughout the course of my 16 years on LinkedIn. I'll look at the Gary V's, and this is a growth hack you might want to write down what I'm about to share with you. I'll look at the Gary V's and the Lewis Howes and the big influential thought leaders in the business world. And there's several out there. I just mentioned two. And I'll see what they're posting and I'll take a look at the comments. And oftentimes I'll just post my thoughts or my position in a very natural manner, right? And what's unfortunate is you have tools nowadays like ChatGPT that can do this for you. But a lot of people can kind of sniff out what reads like it's AI generated versus
Mhm.
I see Mikhail's eyes rolling here
Yep.
versus what's authentic. But it doesn't take much effort to spend, I kid you not, 15 minutes a day, go look at what big accounts are posting and swoop in with a 1 to 2 sentence answer, comment, opinion, perspective. If you do that consistently over time, now your name's going to start to come up in their content. And the algorithm, what's going to start to do is it's going to start to associate your account with that person's account. What are your thoughts,
I
Michaela?
love that. I love that. And fun fact, Lewis Howes started his personal brand on LinkedIn. He was a LinkedIn expert and he just kind of expanded from there. So obviously it works really well for personal branding. There is, do you know John Hall?
I do know John.
So John is, for those that are listening, is the author of Top of Mind, and I just think he's brilliant when it comes to networking, social selling. If you haven't read his book, please get his book. It's life changing. He is also one of the best networkers I've ever encountered in person, and one of the things that that John does really well. Well, he actually does two things. He does will ask people, "How can I be helpful?" Right? And he's more selective now than he used to be because he used to do it a lot more. But just approaching conversations with that, I remember the first time he asked me that, I was so taken aback because I had never been asked that before. So that should tell you something. If I'm constantly out there and I'm not working and I'm talking to all these people and I've never been asked, how can I be helpful to you? That's a growth hack in itself, to be that person that's asking that question, and you could find your own variation of that. But that's a really great approach. The book was Top of Mind by John Hall. The other thing that he does is that he has a helpfulness guide. And I don't know if you know this, Carlos, but he basically has put together a PDF. So for those people, if you have people that already like and trust and know you, you should also be nurturing those relationships. It shouldn't all be about, okay, how many followers can I get? Like, I have, I don't know what it is, 175,000 followers. How many people do I actually know that are there? It's a very small percentage. So if you are watching this and you are saying, oh, well, I only have 100 or 200 or 500 connections, again, think of yourself in a room full of people. That's a lot of people, right? And so you also want to leverage those relationships to create new ones and create new opportunities. So he puts together a PDF and he talks about all the projects that he's working on, all the ways that that person can help them get to his goals. And so taking some time to also think about what you need from people, so that you're being really clear in terms of your asks from people, because it's okay to ask. We all need to ask. There's no way that we can get ahead without asking for things, but it's how you do it, when you do it, and being really clear about what the ask is, rather than saying, hey, can we jump on a call, like you mentioned. My advice to people, because I've gotten this question a lot from people in my inbox, is to put a timestamp on it. Hey, can we jump on a Zoom call for 15 minutes? I want to ask you 3 questions. Or would it be easier for me to email you these 3 questions? Right. So
Mhm.
finding ways that you can get what you need, with also making sure that you're taking care of the needs of the person that you're talking to. It's a very like give and take sort
Yeah.
of relationship.
Yeah, it's just like any other form of relationship building, right? Like no one is going to get into business and buy from you unless they build relatability or likability, right? And especially when we're talking about in B2B. And I think, again, like you make so many good points. In order to really build and scale a brand, a personal brand on LinkedIn, there's so much time and effort that you need to spend giving back to the community, right? And I, like, if I had to say the mistake that I've seen people make throughout the years is they make their LinkedIn about them,
Yeah,
right? Come see me, come
100%.
see what I'm doing, come check
Yeah,
out what I'm doing. And at the end of the day, you're not really, like, spoiler alert, you're really not that important, right?
yeah,
It's about the community. It's
100%.
about giving back to this ecosystem,
Yeah,
right? Now, if you want to really learn the tips and how to be strategic in promoting your agenda, let's talk about that for a moment. Position yourself as an expert in your field. I
mhm,
was able to land multiple jobs working in social media marketing for corporations, along with getting consulting gigs and speaking engagements. And heck, even the role I have today with GetResponse, because of 16 years of being consistent
right?
with positioning myself as a social
Yeah,
media marketing expert. If I would
yeah,
have gone from talking about social media in the early days to then talking about SEO and email and Web3 and NFTs and crypto and, all these other kind of cool moments in time where people's attention is on that thing and ignored the one thing that I've been consistent about, I probably wouldn't have the career that I have today. But my
yeah.
career, and I know yours also, is a
Mhm,
byproduct of you stick to the sandbox of what you
mhm,
know. And when
mhm,
you build authority, trust me, there are people that pay attention. Since I started
mhm,
working at GetResponse 6 months ago, by no means am I an email marketing expert. But since I started six
mhm.
months ago, I can't tell you how many inquiries I get on a daily basis in my email from people asking about GetResponse.
Yep.
They're talking smack about their email service providers, and they're asking for tips about email marketing because, again, it's
Mhm,
all the perception. If you're talking a lot about a topic, people pay attention. So going back to the golden question of how do I sell more, it's very simple. Engage with other people that you want to do business with and build a relationship with them. B, post about the company that you work for and represent, right? So if your company wins an award, an accolade, if the CEO of your company did something really cool, like put the spotlight on your company. That's a way subtly for you to be able to talk about what it is that you do and who you work for without necessarily having to always pitch and right hook. And then position yourself as an expert in
mhm.
your field so you can teach other people systems and strategies So then they'll say, when I need something, I'm going to buy from this person because they're constantly in my feed.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts, Michaela?
I agree with all of those things. I think they're all like absolutely necessary steps in order to get what you want and to get the opportunities you deserve. Before I forget, because it's in like the, I was just on the top of mind. It's the top of my mind right now. I have a challenge for everybody that's on this call because we just passed Canadian Thanksgiving. So for those that are Canadian, you're kind of out of luck, but you can wait for Christmas for this. One of the best marketing slash sales strategies I have ever had, and I do this every single year, is that either for Thanksgiving or for Christmas, I usually do it for Christmas because it's like a lull in business. I just shoot a 2-second video per person. I create a list of like, I'll do like 20 to 30 people of people that have helped me in some way that year, have, given me advice or have taken my phone call, become a client. I actually created these videos for people that rejected me. But I sent a video to each one of them. I put antlers on my ears. You don't have to be like me. You can just be yourself. But I'm going to urge each one of you, create a list of 20 people on Thanksgiving or right before Thanksgiving. You are going to record a video for each person and you're going to go into LinkedIn Messenger and you're going to send them that video. I'm telling you, the amount of people that have said, no one's ever done this for me. Again, these are all these points of differentiation. And you're talking about giving back to the ecosystem. And I know for people listening, the idea of thought leader and expert is hard, right? So if that is hard for you right now, start with just being generous. Just listening, learning, and being generous. I'm telling you, it is by far the best sales and marketing tactic.
Let's transition, Michaela, into actual branding, right? How to optimize your profile. What are the different tips and tricks, like how someone should go about setting up their profile? Because again, kind of staying in this spirit of sales and marketing, and you don't want to necessarily go too left to where you're constantly right hooking, but at the same time, you need that representation on your profile so someone can easily identify who it is that you are, what you do. Like, how should someone go about optimizing their profile for success?
Yeah. So the top of your profile, the cover image, your profile photo, and your headline is what I like to call the prime real estate space. That's 9 out of 10 people aren't going to scroll past that space when they're on LinkedIn. I always like to think of people on LinkedIn. They've got their phone in one hand, they've got their coffee in another, they've got their next Zoom meeting in 5 minutes. So you really need to use that space to clearly demonstrate and communicate who you are and what you want more of. So for the cover image, I hope most of the people that are on this call are familiar with Canva. Sorry, I have a cold and sometimes words aren't popping in my head. Are familiar with Canva, because Canva, the tools that they've introduced this year are just phenomenal. You do not need a graphic designer to create a photo for your cover image. All you need to do for the space is to visually demonstrate what you do. So, and I have clients all the time, for those that are thinking, well, most of my work is online. Yeah, we all have that problem now, right? And so there's a couple different ways that you can approach it. You can take a photo of you speaking to a camera. Like right now, I would just set up my camera. I actually have a tripod right here. So I'd set up my tripod and then I would take a photo of me talking like I am on this call. Or the alternative is that you could show just a screenshot of you speaking in a Zoom call, something like that. There are different ways you can approach it, but it's just you in action. Or if you're a speaker, you on stage. If you want to be a speaker, if you want to speak more, the weirdest thing, when I was starting to speak, all I had to do was show a photo of me speaking on stage, my very first speaking gig, and I started getting more of them, right? Our brains are lazy, so we like to categorize people, and we want to make it really easy for people to be able to do that. If you go and look at my LinkedIn profile, I have 2 photos. I have a photo of me drinking coffee, and it has a LinkedIn logo. I'm like in the LinkedIn studios, so it's LinkedIn Michaela, and then a photo of me on stage, LinkedIn Michaela on stage. So I'm a LinkedIn trainer, and I also am a speaker. And then I've got a photo of my book with a call to action. So that's another great space if you want that person to take some sort of action, whether it's to go to one of your events, if you want them to send you a message on LinkedIn, if you want them to follow you, if you are like, I'm all in, I want to start creating content on LinkedIn, tell them what to expect if they follow you. So I originally had follow me for career experiences and unfiltered lessons that I'm learning, something like that, whatever. It could be anything that you want, but just using that space to tell people what to do next. And then for your profile photo, you want to make sure that your face takes up between 40 to 60% of the frame. I mean, if you have your face like this and people can see up your nostrils, it's probably not going to make them want to keep scrolling. And you also don't want it to be too far away. A lot of people will have these photos with like celebrities and things like that. Just make sure it's you and how you would be in real life. You know, so many of us, when it comes to LinkedIn, we're trying to use it to impress people. And I want you to just delete that out of your mind. And I want you to think of LinkedIn as the world's largest networking event. It's a casual networking event too. And all you're trying to do is shake hands with people. So however you would be in person, you know, obviously you want to have open body language, smile, be very approachable. Your headline should be focused on the person, not on yourself. It should be your introduction to that person. Those are all key elements to get that person to be like, oh, maybe this is somebody that I could connect with.
So I just shared here in the chat. And by the way, for those of you that are watching, make sure that you get your questions in. So Michaela and myself, we can answer as many of them before we come up on the top of the hour. I love this conversation so far. I love where this is going because you're right. There's so much value, and it starts with the way that you set up your profile. So I put here in the chat, try this, Google your name plus LinkedIn. So like literally it would be Carlos Gil LinkedIn, Michaela Alexis LinkedIn. And what I want you to do is really pay attention to what comes up in search results. I know for my name, when I just put in Carlos Gil in the Google search without even LinkedIn, my LinkedIn bio or my profile is one of the first three links that comes up. Mm-hmm. Same for you, Michaela?
Yeah. I mean, how many of us in the chat, like you could just type in, when you are trying to find somebody that you met at an event, if you're trying to look up somebody that you're thinking of hiring, if you're looking up somebody that works at an organization that you want to work at, we're looking at them on LinkedIn. So it's naive to think that people aren't looking at yours. So you want to make sure that whatever they're seeing is something that 100%. You want them to see. Right.
Well, speaking of events, right, I go to a lot of conferences, just like you. Michaela and I are both speakers. So oftentimes when I'm at a conference, someone will try to give me their business card. I let them know, look, I'm going to meet a lot of people here today. Your business card is going to go in my jeans. And then for my jeans, it's going to go on a nightstand. And then for my nightstand, it's going to go in a backpack. I'm probably never going to even look at your business card again. Let's just cut through all the noise and let's connect on LinkedIn right now. So when you really want to start talking about like growth strategies, you need to start thinking of your LinkedIn as your business card over time. When you're at networking events or you're at conferences, starting the habit of connecting on LinkedIn. And it's very simple. You look at someone's badge, you have their name, you put it in the LinkedIn app, boom, you invite them to connect, or vice versa, right? You do this over time, you're going to start growing your LinkedIn profile. Like there's no hidden rocket science to this, right? It's just leveraging your LinkedIn profile in lieu of a business card. But to Michaela's point, when someone looks at your profile, what they see is really going to determine the next steps from there, whether someone's going to do business with you or not potentially, which is why elements like your profile photo, like she mentioned, are very important. My recommendation is have a profile photo of you smiling, right? Show some personality, look approachable, even though if that's not really who you are, perception goes a long way, right? Mm-hmm. So I know that if I'm looking at someone on LinkedIn, they look really serious, I'm going to really second guess, is this someone that I would want to do business with? Would I want to work for them? Would I want to approach them about doing any sort of business with their company, right? So I would say first and foremost, try optimizing your profile to where you're putting yourself in the shoes of the person on the other end. And then right now, or at the end of this, run a Google search for your name on LinkedIn and see what comes up. So branding starts with very simple elements. Obviously, you have your first and last name, and then who you are professionally, right? So I want to be known as a marketer, speaker, author. Why? Because as a marketer, that helps position who I am professionally as an authority in marketing, along with speaker. I want to get more speaking engagements. So I have to have speaker, keynote speaker in my profile. I am an author, so I want more people to associate that expertise as a marketer and speaker with being an author. So Michaela, let's break down your keywords as well. But, what I want those watching this to walk away from this segment with is an understanding of however you want to be perceived. It's important that you're very intentional with these keywords that you put in the short summary of your profile. Don't leave all these keywords like in the big body of copy, like underneath your name. And I say this because when someone Googles you, that's going to be what shows up. It's going to say Carlos Gill, and then right below Jacksonville, Florida, and then marketer, speaker, author. What are your thoughts, Michaela?
I love that. I mean, I think that I have a more like creative approach to SEO and keyword searches in my head because I am constantly like evolving with my brand. Of course, I have been offering LinkedIn training from the beginning, but I just wrote my first to be published book with Wiley on networking, things like that. That my focus has been making sure that I'm not just kind of putting myself in one very specific category in terms of keywords. My whole thing, if you notice, my sign off is loving coffee. And that's always been really intentional to have the coffee mug. I've got a big one right here, like Queen Mom one. It's always been really intentional from day one. When I first started creating on LinkedIn, I would have a photo of me holding a cup of coffee. And by the second photo, people were like, where was the coffee mug? And I realized that this is something that people were associating with me. So the idea of people associating their morning mug or their afternoon mug with me, to me, just made so much sense. So I love to make sure that I include Michaela, LinkedIn, and coffee with everything. And actually, if you have something that's like that, so I put all of this into ChatGPT. I'm like, I copy and pasted my LinkedIn profile about a month ago. I put in ChatGPT. I'm like, give me my brand colors because I wanted to kind of spice things up a little bit. My brand colors have been the same since the beginning. And it gave me kind of like this, like, blue, like very light, sort of like whimsical blue. It gave me a millennial pink, which made sense because I brand myself as a millennial LinkedIn speaker and trainer. And then the last one was a dark brown. And that's something that I've been starting to incorporate into my LinkedIn content, my LinkedIn profile. And I thought that that was really cool because I wouldn't have considered that. But that's something that you can also do if you have enough information on your LinkedIn profile already and keywords and all of that good stuff. Throw it into ChatGPT and see if there's some branding that you can create that's going to complement those keywords that you're trying to optimize your profile with. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Now, let's talk about content, right? I often say that LinkedIn is a platform. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, where you should absolutely celebrate your wins, but also acknowledge your losses and
Mhm.
start with losses, right? We're in
Yeah.
a season right now where you have a lot of folks that have been announcing that they've been laid off from their jobs,
Yeah.
right? Let's not even take it too far. At the end of last year, I myself became very vocal on LinkedIn and say, hey, look, this entrepreneur thing, this is hard work. I'm looking to go back to work and do the things I love, which is public speaking, helping brands grow. And within a few months, I landed this gig at GetResponse. So even myself, I'm a byproduct of the power of LinkedIn, but also more so the byproduct of making yourself vulnerable, right? So many times in social media, we see in this flex culture, people
Mhm.
celebrating their wins, right? They
Yeah.
want to show success. But the reality is that success comes and goes in waves. It's almost like a roller coaster. Just like you have highs, you have lows. So I'm a proponent of celebrating your lows because people relate to that. But I'm also a proponent of celebrating those wins because when you celebrate the wins, like for example, you get a speaking engagement,
Mhm.
you show that you're on the road, or like
Mhm.
when you were filming with us, right? You're talking about I'm in Dallas, I'm with GetResponse, right? It's that momentum, right, of the highs and lows that makes yourself relatable, but it also in ways can uncover additional opportunities.
For sure. And, I remember when I first started working for myself, my husband at one point was like, Michaela, do you realize that you're now getting paid just to be yourself? Which is like, it's such a dream. And I was just talking about ChatGPT, and there was a study that was done recently where they talked about copywriting and how it actually makes sense to add in a couple mistakes. I don't know if you've heard this one, Carlos, but even when it comes to like your voice, like speeches, writing, it actually makes sense to add in A's, like, I do all that stuff. I just did it because people profession with being like a robot, and it makes people trust you less. So adding in those little oh, I forgot a word, those are things that actually connect us. And so I like to think of like content in the same way, where I absolutely will share the wins. I will share speaking engagements that I get. When I landed my book deal, I talked about that on LinkedIn. And that's all really important because it shouldn't all be about the losses, hopefully. But I think that there's also a way to approach this where you're not just talking about, because I think that when you mention losses, it kind of feels like you need to talk about you losing your job, or you need to talk. It doesn't have to be you losing your job. It can be as simple as talking about a challenge that you've encountered on the way to success. That can actually make your story of success even more powerful. So for me, after the pandemic, I hadn't traveled for a very long time, and I started to have social anxiety again, something that I've dealt with my entire life. But it's definitely gotten much worse after the pandemic and going on maternity leave. Now, when I went to LinkedIn, the studios in Santa Barbara, that was the first time I traveled. And so I shared the news of this new course that I was working with them, but also shared a photo of me on the beach with my toes in the sand, just like so grateful that I had done it. I had been able to travel on my own again because I didn't think that would be possible. So I think that's a story that's a really good mixture of sharing the challenges that you encountered along the way while also sharing the wins.
So I want to get to some of the questions here in the audience. I'm going to ask you a question here in a moment about advice that you wish you would have received before you got on LinkedIn. But I want to encourage those that are watching to ask any questions that you have for Michaela or myself. We're going to go for about another 18 minutes here. I also want to thank those of you that are watching and encourage you to post your LinkedIn profile in the chat here within the platform. Look, LinkedIn has been game changing for both Michaela and I's careers. We want it to also be a game changer, a career changer for you as well watching. But you've got to connect with people, right, in order to really get the value out of this. So if all of us here can take a moment to drop our LinkedIn profiles in the chat, let's just make it a priority to connect with one another and also support one another, with one another. And what I love about GetResponse is that we're a global company based in Poland. I'm here in Florida. You, Michaela, are now one of our course creators. You're in Canada, right? Like we're all over the globe, right? And that's the essence of LinkedIn. It's a platform that spans all over the world. And I'm curious to hear from you, Michaela. What is like one or two critical pieces of advice or a tip that you wish that you would have received prior to your LinkedIn journey?
Oh, the biggest one is just start. Like, I think that is so huge. I think, especially as a woman in the workplace, I think it is especially hard to think that I'm an expert on anything. If I had met you, Carlos, before I started creating on LinkedIn, and you had told me, like, you need to be an expert in something, I probably would have thrown up. I will lie. That's still something that I struggle with, imposter syndrome and all of those things. And that's the beauty, is that you don't need to be perfect to pick up the camera or log on to LinkedIn and just start. If you look at my earliest articles on LinkedIn, they were not great. I came from an academic background, was in school for 6 years, and they weren't resonating with people. I think I had like 3 likes. My dad was one of them. But I kept trying and I kept sharing, and I learned through the process that I need to speak more conversationally. And I need to, one of my hacks was I would go through the post that I was creating and I would click on, I think it's like Control F to find when I said me and my and and I changed those to you, your, yours. So it's a whole process to learn how to create for people, but giving yourself the permission to not be perfect from the very beginning. Who was it? There's a really great influencer that talks about perfectionism. Perfectionism, we like to think like, oh, I haven't started because I'm a perfectionist. That's actually not the definition of perfectionism. Perfectionism is putting out a product and perfecting it as you go. And so I am a big believer in just like starting with what you have. Every single person on this call has a story, and your story, I promise you, is going to be 10 times more powerful than any experience that you could share. So just start with who you are, your story, invite people to get invested, because then it becomes like a whole series. Like, people are following me now because they followed me in 2016 when I was a job seeker, because they want to see how the story ends up. So give people a glimpse into what it's like to be you and your journey, and just take it from there, and full permission to suck, because I sucked in the beginning too.
That's great advice, Michaela. Look, I'm going to transition here to some of the Q&A in the chat. I'm going to put a question here on the screen, but before I put it up on the screen, I would love for you to talk a little bit about your course that's soon going to be dropping with GetResponse, and where can our viewers connect with you. So as soon as the course goes live, not only are they going to receive an email from GetResponse, but they can connect with you and hear from you directly.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the course because I feel like this was such a like little sneak peek, like a little taste of what's included in the course. If you are looking for things like, we talked about headlines and we talked about sharing your story, all of these, like the little nitty gritty, all the formulas, the strategies, we get really deep into those things in the course. So if these are intriguing you, you're like, I'm excited, I'm motivated, but how do I start? And you want the roadmap is going to be available to you if you take the course. So I'm really, really excited about it. And then
Awesome. Now we have
they can find me on LinkedIn. It's just Michaela, Michael with an A, and Alexis. That is my real name, my real last name. And you can find me on there. And you can also join my company page. And I have all sorts of LinkedIn training as well on there.
Now, Michaela, we have a question here that comes in from Carrie. Carrie's asking, how do you get all of your employees to comment and share on their profiles when corporate posts are made? It's a great employee advocacy question, most like which doesn't get to their contacts.
Yeah, the like just seems like a I'm gonna do my bare minimum part sort of thing. I've been there, I understand it. I think that there are a couple ways that you can approach this. Number one, when it comes to being an organization, there has to be an incentive for the employee. And so kind of I've seen a lot of great companies that will kind of gamify the process where it's like, that's how I got people involved. At the last job, my dream job, I was working at an IT support company and they were fantastic and they had great company culture. And we just created a game and we're like, the first person to get to 10 shares. I can't remember what it was. They had all the numbers. They were the IT people. So they set it all up. The first person to get to 10 shares gets X, right? And so making it maybe more interesting for the person. The other thing, and most companies don't think of this, is that this is why you need to involve your employees. Like, it got to the point on my last job where I had to lock my door because these IT workers were coming and they were like, Michaela, I have another idea for social media. And they had never posted before this. But it was because I was really careful to go to them, to ask them questions, to share when they got a promotion or when new people were hired or when they passed their probation period. We had this like whole signing ceremony. It was very dorky and I loved it. But sharing all of those milestones online, people are going to be far more likely to share content that's about them, is going to be relevant to their audience, than they are that's just going to be relevant to your audience, or you want to increase your numbers. So that's a really important reason to share those employee stories, and also get your employees involved and ask them, hey, what are you interested in? Have you read any really good articles that we could share? Have you read any content? And it's kind of this idea of moving the responsibility of marketing away from a single individual to spreading it among the business. The biggest brand I worked with, Walmart at one point, and they do extensive training on
Hmm.
social media, not just with their like upper management or anything like that, with people that work, like cashiers that are working in the stores are taking all of these webinars and trainings. I've done training for them. And to me, that is so important to get everybody involved, because that's the thing too, is that maybe they're liking it because they don't know the difference between a like and a share or a comment. So making sure that that training is also available for new employees, saying, hey, this is really helpful when you comment on this post, is also really helpful. You guys do a great job at GetResponse in terms of employee engagement.
I appreciate it. I can't take credit for it. I've only been at GetResponse for 6 months. We have a really good social media team that gets it. But what I
They're
wanted to
amazing.
build on what you said is like, look, I'm a big proponent of humanizing your brand through employees. I wrote the book, The End of Marketing, Humanizing Your Brand in the Age of Social Media and AI. And one of the inspirations behind writing The End of Marketing is just that. It's employee advocacy. After spending over a decade of working for corporations and being behind the controls of their social media and seeing anytime the brand posts, there is just this lackluster results. But yet, when employees post a very small audience within their own community of friends, those employees seem to get so much higher engagement than the brand itself. And after years of doing this sort of work and then consulting for different brands, right, I came to the realization, and this is again what motivated me to write them to marketing, is that today every single company needs to essentially turn their employees into marketers, like you say. And the way that you do that is by selling the why this matters to someone that works in sales versus why it matters to
Yes.
someone that works in marketing or
Yes.
HR. Like, you have to think of this at the end of the day, like employees are selfish, like we all are as human
Hmm.
beings, right? So you can't just with a broad stroke say, hey, we're rolling this thing out and it's really cool and we want you to post, because at the end of the day, like, who cares, right? So what? Like, why do I want to post to my friends, my
Yeah.
neighbors? Like, why do I always want to be evangelizing a brand if I don't work in marketing? Well, it's very simple. If you make it about the why, meaning if you make it about sales, if I share more about my company, then more people are going to buy, and that's going to help boost my bonus, right? Because we're going to have more revenue.
Hmm.
If I work in HR and show that we have a really fun company culture, it's going to
Hmm.
make my job easier because I'm going to be able to attract and retain top tier talent. If in marketing, we now have our entire marketing department promoting webinars and podcasts and campaigns, now that's going to boost our overall metrics and our numbers. So our CMO is going to be happier. Now he or she's going to be more compelled to invest in marketing. Like, this is all intertwined and connected. Now, it took me years to figure out the psychology behind it. So for the person that's asking this question, Carrie, you're probably looking for like that one answer, that one like strategy or thing that you can do. I would say what you need to do is go to all the department leads at your company, and you need to get those department leads to allow you to do a training
Yes.
on how LinkedIn and
How it
or
works.
social
Yeah.
media benefits that department.
A hundred
You
percent.
deliver a training to that department, and then with that department, you're going to get them on board, and you go department at a time. And I see your head nodding, Michaela. What are your thoughts?
I've done this. I've been in like very similar positions to as you, Carlos, and that's how I've done this from company to company to company in terms of like raising. We raised our Google reviews, whatever the project was. That was the biggest thing, was the training. You need to carry. I assume that you're marketing. You need to market to your team internally. We sometimes forget that as marketers. It's like, we just got to do this thing, help me out. But you also need to market to the people that you need to help you market, right? So I think that's a great idea, is talking to those heads of departments or talking to those team leaders and asking, again, it goes back to listening and learning. what's a good incentive for these people to like what resonate it's going to resonate most in terms of messaging for this particular group. And it's just it's actually it's quite easy once usually when people are trained and they understand the value for them personally, it becomes really, really easy.
I want to get to another question here. We have about 5 minutes left in today's webinar. So I want to pull up this question here. Give me a moment. So I'm putting this on the screen. This is from Sonia.
I saw that one.
Oh yeah, this is a juicy one right here. Is it true that negative stories get more traction and responses than positive stories in LinkedIn posts? So what are your thoughts on that? I know I have an answer.
I mean, this is referred to as rage baiting. When you're posting something.
Is that the official name for it?
It's called rage baiting. And people sometimes post something that's going to cause a certain reaction in people. From my personal experience over time, I would actually say that it is the opposite. I think on LinkedIn, especially, I think on Facebook, it's different. You have to remember on LinkedIn, people are associated with a company, they've got their face. It's not as inconspicuous as other platforms. So I've always found that my positive stories have gotten a lot more visibility and more comments. I will say that there is a space for like negative stories. I've talked about a recent loss that I had. And even though it didn't get quite as much visibility, I got more messages privately. You know what I mean? So like, even if you're talking about something like mental health, like any of the, like the more sensitive topics, I don't know if that would be negative necessarily, but it's not as positive as talking about like, oh, I'm writing a book. So I think that there's a place for both. But positive stories, if you are looking to, in terms of straight visibility, I mean, in general, I would say to stick to positive stories because you don't want to be kind of put in that pigeonhole.
Look, I want to say this, right? When we talk about like a negative versus a positive story, a story is a story at the end of the day, right? How you perceive it is completely different, right? Like there's so many times where I read what we would consider a positive feel-good story that actually I don't want to say feel-good. I just want to say positive, right? So someone's celebrating a win. Well, that win is very like real to that person, but it's not necessarily relatable to the masses. So I believe that what makes you real and relatable to the masses is what makes you human and what makes people at the end of the day want to connect with you and get to know you, right? Like there's more people out there that right now can relate to the hero's journey or the hero's story of like they lost a job, they're trying to bounce back from adversity, than the person that just like exited their company for $100 million, right? Or the person just closed on a round of financing for $100 million from XYZ venture capital firm. Like that's again where like I think that there's a yin and a yang here. I don't necessarily look at a story of a loss or something that's a little bit more like on the sad side as a negative story, right? It's a person that's taking to a medium like LinkedIn and making themselves very vulnerable. And like, trust me, I've had to do it. Michaela's had to do it. I've seen Michaela's stories, right? I just shared mine earlier in terms of, you know, when I was on the job hunt. It takes a lot for a human being to make themselves vulnerable to strangers. Like at the end of the day, Michaela said it as well. Like she's connected to well over 100,000 people, right? I'm connected to thousands of people on these mediums also. My circle is very small in real life, right? So to go on these mediums and to share a very personal story, right? It takes a lot of courage, but what happens is when you do that, you unlock through that vulnerability access to people that can relate. So I think, again, when you see that some of these stories have higher traction in terms of engagement, what you're really seeing is that there are more people out there that are relating to that story than the person that's posting the positive story. What are your thoughts?
It's not, I always say it's not about your story, it's whether or not the person can see themselves in your story. So whether you're sharing something that's positive, negative, sad, happy, you need to not only share the what, which is your story, but why it matters to the person that's reading it. So sharing the lessons that you learn through that process. And I think that if you can include both, there you can pretty much cover any topic on LinkedIn. Like especially now, the platform has changed dramatically. The culture is so different. I think it's like 65% of people on the platform are like millennials and Gen Z. Like it's skewed much younger than it used to be. And so this is a golden age to be sharing the things that are important to you, but just kind of remembering the formulas and the strategies, which is why I think that you need to take the full course, because we dive into a lot of that in terms of content. And I think it's going to be really helpful. These are things that it took me like a year to learn these formulas on my own. Before that, I was just kind of guessing and making mistakes along the way. So let me cut out the legwork for you.
Michaela, we are at time. Before I turn it over to you to take us home and tell us about the course and once again where folks can connect with you, I just posted a link here in the chat, which goes to our content monetization platform. If you're not familiar with our all new content monetization tools within GetResponse, I highly recommend that you click on the link and you sign up. You can sign up for a free trial. You can jump in right away and go through all the tools that are going to help you monetize your brand and monetize your content. So with Michaela, she's going to be dropping a course. With yourself, it's so easy. We have built-in AI tools. You can literally create a course from your office, from your house, and it doesn't take a lot of work or effort. And you should, from my perspective, be looking for ways to monetize your knowledge because, let's face it, today, people, they're hungry for knowledge. They want to learn. They want to level up. And part of that level up is leveraging LinkedIn. So we have the expert here, Michaela Alexis, that has shared her time with us over the last hour. And Michaela, once again, I want to thank you for working with GetResponse. For those that are watching, let them know, once again, how they can connect with you and your amazing course that you are rolling out very soon.
Yeah, like I said, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I have an open profile too. So if you wanted to send me a message, I'm happy to read and respond to those. I also have my LinkedIn, I think it's called LinkedIn Training. I can't remember. Anyways, I've got my LinkedIn company page on there as well. It's got a little pink logo, and I share newsletters, articles, videos, all of the things every single week on there if you are interested in LinkedIn training. And if you kind of want to just get the blueprint, if you're like, I'm into this, I want to figure out how to crack the code. Like I said, let me just do the leg. I've done the legwork for you. I figured out all the strategies and the formulas that have worked not only for me, but for dozens, hundreds, if not thousands of professionals, just like me and you over the past 6 years. And I drop it all in this very cool upcoming course. And I'm really, really excited for you to join me.
All right, we are at time. Michaela, thank you so much. I can't wait to share the all new LinkedIn for Beginners course with our audience here at GetResponse. As always, love and coffee.
You're a big coffee. Bye, guys.
We'll see you. Bye-bye.